Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Today we talk about a perfect weekend for the Knicks, some hot shooting from Jalen Brunson and Donte DiVincenzo, why their offense is now one of the better ones in the NBA and potentially playoff proof, and much more from what was just one of the better weekends of Knicks basketball in my recent memory. All that and more next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because we are now available on all platforms. So if you haven't yet subscribed on YouTube, hit that notifications bell and be sure to do the same. Usually it's more of a follow button on your favorite audio podcast platform of choice. And then if you want to take things to the next level, my girlfriend will be upset, but she doesn't have to know. You can click the subscription link to our Subtext. That's right. You can join our Subtext, where we will send you our thoughts before and after every single game on the New York Knicks. And you can text us your questions on the team. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. Alex will be back a little bit later in the week, but I was just too excited to wait, because the New York Knicks, a perfect 2-0 weekend, a 120-99 victory over the Wizards, and then a 122-108 win over the Charlotte Hornets. The Knicks have now won 7 of their last 8 games. And I want to get into what was just an electric weekend for both Jalen Brunson and Donte DiVincenzo. But before I do that, I wanted to zoom out real quick. So the Knicks have now won 7 of their last 8 games after what was, I don't want to say a disastrous start to the season, because there were certainly some good signs there, but I'm going to call it a concerning start to the season, right? Where Jalen Brunson didn't totally look like Jalen Brunson. Julius Randle, that was more than concerning. That was a disaster. Josh Hart, and this is still a little bit of an ongoing issue, didn't quite look like the same guy. And it was kind of just Mitchell Robinson propping up a team that, I don't know. I would be lying if I didn't say like I wasn't slightly concerned that we were seeing maybe a not as egregious version of 21-22, where this team had all this hype. They were bringing all these guys back. They added some key new pieces, and for whatever reason, they just weren't going to be as good as the previous year. And now the Knicks look like a much better team than they were last year. In fact, they are currently top 10 in the NBA in both offensive and defensive rating. And generally, when you were looking for metrics that define not just a good team, but a title contender, that's what you go to. They're 10th in offense. They are 5th in defense. The only other teams that can claim that so far this year are the Celtics, the Nuggets, and probably the very young and very, very scary Oklahoma City Thunder. So their defense has been good since the start of the year. In fact, you zoom back like a week to a week and a half ago, the Knicks were top 3 in the NBA in defense. So that's really encouraging. We'll see just how long that sustains. And so much of it rests on the broader than ever shoulders of Mitchell Robinson. The offense is what's more interesting to me, because last year the Knicks were tied for third in the NBA in offensive rating. They had one of the best offensive ratings in NBA history. This year, they are 10th, but I think that might be misleading, because the way they're playing now, I think is going to ultimately prove, if not in the regular season, then in the playoffs, to be not only a better offense than last year, I think possibly a substantially better offense than last year. So what's going into that? First, 3-point shooting. So shout out to Knicks Film School's Jonathan Macri for the stat. Over the last 7 games, since that loss to the Bucks, or I guess it would be the last 8 games. And anyways, over their last 7 games, the Knicks are the second best 3-point shooting team in all basketball. They're shooting 43% from 3, just percentage points behind the Thunder for the best mark in the NBA. Overall in the season, they are the 6th best 3-point shooting team in the entire league. They're 9th in makes. Last season, they were 19th in percentage and 11th in makes. So their volume is down a bit from last year. Their accuracy way, way, way up. What goes into that? Now we get to focus on the individual guys. Jalen Brunson. So I spent all offseason talking about his shooting, right? And harping on his shooting and noting that his attempts were honestly egregious for one of the better scorers in the NBA. And you looked across the league, and all the star ball handlers were taking 7 to 10 threes per game, while Jalen Brunson was taking under 5 last season. He's up to just under 7 this year. On top of that, he is currently hitting 47.7% of his three-point attempts, which is obviously very good. In fact, it's the 6th best percentage in the NBA so far amongst players with at least 20 made threes. He's 7th in the entire league in made threes, and that's despite the fact that out of the entire top 10, he's taken the least. So as good as he's been so far, I think these last 2 games show us there's even more meat on the bone, right? Against the Hornets, he shot 4 for 8 from distance. Against the Wizards, he was 6 for 10. But I think part of the story there is how he's getting those threes. And they're not just a product of the other Knicks ball handlers generating him wide open looks with his toes hovering over the line, which not to say that was always the case last year, but that was a lot of his attempts, right? They're more self-generated this year. And the Knicks are doing something that you guys can correct me if I'm off on this, but from what I remember from last year, they were not doing, and that's setting screens much further up the court. So just inside half court, you'll see the Warriors obviously do stuff like this for Steph Curry for years. You saw the Blazers for years do this for Damian Lillard. And it's a play that if you have a great pull-up three-point shooter that also has some speed and is a real threat off the dribble, a defense really has no answer to. And that's either set a single screen or what you would call stagger screens. So screens on either side for your lead ball handler. And the Knicks have started doing that for Jalen Brunson. They've also started doing it for Emmanuel Quickly. And that's where things get really, really dicey for a defense. Because Brunson is so crafty. He can fake going around the screen one way and then go around the opposite screen. He can reject the screen altogether if it's just a single screen. And you have to track Mitchell Robinson rolling to the rim, which is a massive issue, because even if the Knicks aren't always going to throw it to him for a lob, he's going to have ideal positioning for an offensive rebound if your big hovers out to try and slow down Jalen Brunson. You also have to track Julius Randle when you set 2 screens, who's obviously the way he's playing right now, one of the better scorers, one of the bigger offensive threats in all of basketball. You go under that screen, you're screwed, right? Because Jalen Brunson now can pull up from 25 to 27 feet with confidence, and he can do it over and over again. I don't know mechanically what the difference in his shot is. I think hopefully we're going to get someone like either Prez or DJ on, and they can maybe break it down for us. I think his release might be a little bit higher. What's clearer than anything is he's just generating more power on his shot, and that might be leg strength, that might be core strength, that might be him having a more emphasized dip in his shot. Whatever it is, he's clearly getting it off from deeper easier than he ever has. And Brunson's shooting creates a cascading effect across the floor and opens everything up for everyone else. And you can take advantage of that if you have guys who are willing to cut and willing to move off the ball. And that's why it's been, I think, a real boon to this offense that it's been Donte DiVincenzo and not Quentin Grimes in this line. Because Grimes is a decent cutter. He'll incorporate it. DiVincenzo's pretty clearly alongside, shockingly, and we'll get into this in just a sec, Julius Randle, the single best cutter that the Knicks have. And he is feasting off the ball right now. You saw it over and over again in these 2 games, his ability to have a sense for open space. I mean, and just recognition of when his defender isn't paying attention. Like there's a play really early on in the Hornets game where LaMelo Ball just kind of fell asleep, turned his back, and Julius Randle picked him out right away. Randle is a big part of this as well, because not only has he been a more willing cutter this year, and that's allowed, I mean, just the 2-man game between him and Jalen Brunson and their ability to leverage each other on the floor. It was something that frustrated me last year, that it felt like a lot of times they were they were both really good, but they were both operating in a vacuum and weren't taking advantage of the other one being on the court. That was clearly such a major emphasis for the Knicks this offseason, to get those two playing off each other and taking advantage of each other's gravity. And you see it going both ways, with Julius consistently cutting late to the basket as a bailout option, late in shot clocks where Brunson would otherwise be trapped. And it's so nice to see from Julius, because we talk about him defensively, and I'll get into this later. This is certainly still an issue to some extent or another for Julius. Like, he can be a selfish defensive player at times, obviously, but you see him offensively being totally unselfish and making an effort to make himself available when his teammates would otherwise just kind of be pinned. And he's not only cutting to score, he's cutting to pass. And that's something we're seeing from everyone on this Knicks team. So that is really, really exciting. DiVincenzo is, I mean, just circling back, is such a good fit in this lineup. And obviously, of course, it looks way better when he's absolutely cooking from three. And he's a really good shooter. He's not necessarily the shooter he's been the last two games where he went, let me see where I have the numbers here. He went 11 for 18 from three these last two, but his cutting makes him such a clean fit. His defensive playmaking makes him such a clean fit. And we're going to continue talking about that. Julius doing some matchup hunting and dive a little bit deeper in how the Knicks won these two games. But before I get into all that, I wanted to remind you guys about our good friends over at Prize Picks, because it is just about the most fun I've ever had playing daily fantasy. But what is Prize Picks? It's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. So this is what I love about Prize Picks, right? Because I've always been really into daily fantasy, but I just don't have the time to be one of those dudes who's living in his mom's basement and just running spreadsheets. And you know what? Honestly, I don't have the intelligence either. So credit to those guys. But it's kind of an unfair advantage. And if you're not willing to make that kind of commitment, this is what the other sites won't tell you. It's almost impossible to win. But on Prize Picks, instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So you're not really competing against anyone other than those stat projections. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. So, for example, you could say Jalen Brunson over 3.5 threes and a combined over on 5.5 threes for Jalen Brunson and Tommy DeVito touchdowns for the New York Giants. I really hate that they won that game, but that's another story. Want to play alongside of Prize Picks' favorite players? You can do so with rappers like Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can find them now in the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each and every week. Another great thing that they offer is a reboot policy. So now, even if one of your players gets injured, you still stay and play for football and basketball games. If your player exits the game in the first half and does not return the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy for anyone who's dealt with the pain of losing out on a great opportunity just because your player gets hurt. That is no longer an issue. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. You can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's continue talking Donte DiVincenzo. So I've seen the conversation. Should he start for Quinn Grimes? And I need to apologize to Donte because I think saying that I was a hater would be over-exaggerating it, but I didn't understand why he was playing over Quinn Grimes this year. And I kind of I thought Quinn Grimes, and still in some ways think Quinn Grimes is just the more talented option. But you see what Donte can bring to the table over these two games that the Knicks just controlled for the most part from start to finish with his shooting, with his cutting. I think at this point, I would maybe be reticent to mix things up just because the bench has been so good this year, and you're going to play teams that aren't the Hornets, that aren't the Wizards, and you're going to need an elite wing defender out there. And DiVincenzo is arguably as good, if not a better playmaker defensively than Quinn Grimes, but he's not the steady possession-to-possession one-on-one defender that Grimes is. And that's where my hesitation would come in. He's also not going to shoot the way he has every single night. That being said, I think Grimes has to incorporate some of what DiVincenzo brings into his game, and that includes being a proactive cutter. That includes being more of a playmaker, which is something we saw throughout the entire weekend for Donte DiVincenzo as a secondary option, right? Like there was a play in that Wizards game where Jalen Brunson ran a ghost dribble handoff, right? It was a play Obi Toppin always ran. The quarterback keeper got to the rim. He sprayed it out to Donte DiVincenzo, who beat a hard closeout, attacked, and hit Mitch on a lob, right? And we'll see Grimes do that occasionally. But for DiVincenzo, that is his default setting. That is that Bucks DNA, that is that Warriors DNA leaking into this Knicks offense and just creating more juice, more activity, more movement, more passing, all this stuff that the Knicks offense, that despite being very good last year, ultimately lacked. They were very stagnant. And again, as much as they were a record-setting unit in the regular season, to me, that is why it didn't translate into playoffs. That is why, despite winning the series, they sucked against the Cavs. Despite competing against the Heat, they were historically poor on offense in that series. And DiVincenzo brings that extra, not only speed element, but speed of decision-making, basketball IQ to the table that the Knicks lacked. And I think it's become contagious. Like you see RJ Barrett just popping to the wing, not to try to score, but because he sees there's an opening in whether it was the Wizards or the Hornets zone, and teams are going to close on him, and he's going to be able to make a pass. You see Julius Randle, because the floor is that much more spread, like seeing passes and proactively passing and enjoying passing more than he ever has in the past. And that is a really big deal for the New York Knicks. You see Jalen Brunson finding passes that he's never found in the past. And part of that's just him putting in work. Like he's running pick and roll, going left side, and then spraying it to the opposite corner on a dime. That's LeBron passing. That's the Luka passing. That is the centrifuge to a great NBA offense. That's a pass that has to be in your repertoire. The cross court one-handed sling. And sure, he can't, like LeBron and Luka, they can throw that at 100 miles an hour over their head, right? And Jalen's never going to be able to do that because he's 7 inches shorter than those guys. But the fact that it's in his bag to occasionally do it is something we haven't seen from him before. And that is going to create easier shots. That is going to change the Knicks offense. That's going to get, whether it's DiVincenzo, Grimes, Hart, Randall, resting in that opposite corner, they're going to get better looks. And that is why the Knicks 3-point percentage is skyrocketing this year. And look, we just have to look at both these games again in kind of a bigger picture sense, right? The Knicks just took care of business this week. And I know it got a little, like against the Wizards, they went up, by like 20 in the second quarter and then gave it up, and Washington got within 5. But then they immediately responded in that game. Like it didn't, like they were having issues in transition, and Washington started hitting some open threes, and then a 20-2 run in the fourth quarter to just put things away. And I was going to save this for later, but man, Emmanuel quickly was great in that. But real quick, let's mention that against the Hornets, wire-to-wire victory, right? The Knicks were never really in any danger. What were some common themes? I mean, I told you how they got it done, big picture offensively, but I think the way Julius Randle is playing, like obviously Jalen Brunson as well, is just absolutely cooking. Like he had 26 points in the first 18 minutes against the Hornets. And I was watching it on replay. So I was watching the Hornets broadcast. Like they were talking about him potentially putting together a 50-piece in the first half of the entire game. But Julius Randle, him coming out and hitting threes early, like when the Knicks felt really dangerous last year, it was because Julius would come out and make a statement in the first quarter. He's one of the 2 or 3 best first quarter scorers in the NBA last year. And where that really happened, it wasn't him always just coming out and bulldozing over and over and over again. It was him coming out and being confident from 3. And I would note it as the season went on last year, but his percentage on his first three of the game was just ridiculous. It felt like, especially the second half of the season, when the Knicks really started cooking, that would go in every single time. We've seen that the last 4 or 5 games, he starts the games off with a three, and it always seems to go in. And that opens everything up. And once he's hitting that, then he gets really confident going inside. And because the two-man game between him and Brunson has improved, because the Knicks are using him more creatively, like they're running pick and rolls where Julius is the ball handler and Mitch is the roller. Like, you're seeing him consistently generate mismatches. And of course, it has to be noted that the Wizards and the Hornets were particularly ripe for this, right? Neither team has a great matchup for him. You saw him getting to go against Kyle Kuzma, getting to go against Brandon Miller. Heck, even some plays he had Jordan Poole on him against the Wizards. And he was taking advantage this whole weekend over and over again, finishing inside and just showing great patience, right? Even Denny Avdia, like first or second play against the Wizards, went right at him, missed a shot, put it right back. And that's the opportunity he has when you're going to put him in pick and roll with Mitchell Robinson. And Mitch is still around the rim, but at least his big man is a little bit disoriented. He's not right there. But also when Randall's willing to pass the ball to Mitch, and all of a sudden Mitch's guy has to stay home a little bit. Randall's getting cleaner one-on-one matchups than he has in the past. And when he isn't, like there was this play, I can post a screenshot with this episode, where he had 4 defenders around him with the Wizards. He's doing such a good job waiting for those guys to commit and then spraying it out and creating a wide open shot for DiVincenzo, or hitting DiVincenzo wide open on a backdoor cut off of what he's doing as a scorer, as a facilitator. He has been so good in this game. He's actively seeking out Mitchell Robinson. I know I've said that on past podcasts, but it's stunning because Julius Randle had acted in the past like Mitchell Robinson was sending flirty DMs to his mom. Like, he did not want to give the ball to the guy. And now you see like pick and rolls where Mitch is like, there was one against the Wizards where he just took Kyle Kuzma out of the play. Randall baited Daniel Gafford into guarding him, and then just threw right at the rim, like went up as if he was going to shoot. Last second lefty hook dump off to Mitchell Robinson for a dunk. Those are beautiful plays. And you see just these tic-tac-toe passing sequences come into play over and over and over again. The two-man game between him and Jalen Brunson, that's awesome. He's plowing through guys. He's shooting over them. Can't say enough about Julius Randle. I want to get into Emmanuel quickly because he was the guy down the stretch of that Hornets game that took the Knicks home. Some other quick thoughts across the roster, and then some really quick kind of initial take on the Timberwolves matchup tonight and what it means to the Knicks. But before I get into that, I want to tell you guys about our buddies over at FanDuel. You can score early both this NFL and NBA season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning, I can't emphasize this enough, $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins and you're just putting down $5. Insanity. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over, unders, and more. The Knicks on FanDuel tonight. I don't want to call out our guys over at FanDuel, but wow. So when I started this podcast, the line was Knicks +3. So that means the Knicks are 3-point underdogs. Knicks +3.5. Since I've started doing this podcast in the last 20 minutes, it's gone at a Knicks +3. The money is flowing towards the Knicks. You need to get on it before it's too late. They're playing so well. I think they're going to win tonight. The fact that they're getting points against this Timberwolves team, even a good one, I think is a really good sign. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off both the NFL and the NBA season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Emmanuel quickly. This was so cool to see. Obviously, he is from the DMV. His mom was at the game against the Wizards, and he was awesome in terms of how he closed this one out. Didn't have a bad start to the game by any means. Had 13 points going into the fourth quarter, but then to start the fourth, just ripped the Wizards apart. And the greatest part about it was he was hot from three. He made some really big shots, but it was the fact that he was getting to the rim over and over and over again. It reminded me, if people remember the Wizards game at the end of that lost 21-22 season, that was just miserable for the most part. But the way him and Obi Toppin closed that season, they had this game late against the Wizards where Emmanuel quickly got to the rim over and over and over again. And it had me coming out and saying, this guy can be a really high level lead ball handler down the road. We didn't get to see a ton of that last year, obviously, with Jalen Brunson in the mix. But this Wizards game, you saw the potential once again for Emmanuel quickly. He scored 8 points in the first 90 seconds of the fourth. He ended up with 16 points total in the quarter. And it was him the Knicks were setting screens out for him, whether it was a stagger or a single near half court. And he was just too fast. He was winning to the rim over and over again. He was hitting big three after big three. He was flashing the mid-range game. Like, he capped off that run with just a crazy baseline fadeaway. It was just tough shot making. And he is thriving when he gets on the floor with DiVincenzo, when he gets some time, as he did quite a bit this weekend with RJ Barrett missing the first game and Quentin Grimes missing both games, with DiVincenzo out there, with Emmanuel quickly out, or not with Emmanuel, with Jalen Brunson out there, with Julius Randle out there. The attention that those guys draw, how spaced the floor was. Like you just saw like these swing passing sequences that led to quickly getting to attack closeouts over and over again. And he's just going to toast those every time. He's simply too fast. His passing again really stood out. He had this absolutely crazy pass to Julius Randle where he beat his man, turning the corner, didn't have any angle to the rim, ended up doing like a double pump, and then he loves doing this little 180 in midair. Like, so he's driving, if you're watching on YouTube, he's driving right, gets past the rim, flips around, swings it back to the right side to cutting Julius Randle for a layup. And it's just anticipatory passing that we haven't always seen from him. But I can't emphasize enough how good he was in that game. Had an absolutely sick layup against the Hornets. He's really playing at a high level right now. And as your fourth option over the weekend, like he's a total luxury. Like he finished that Wizards game with 27 points, 10 of 18, 3 for 7 from 3, 4 for 5 from the line, 6 rebounds, 4 assists in just 33 minutes. And he was, I can't say enough how good he was. All right. Some quick final thoughts on the weekend that was. Mitchell Robinson, nothing new, but again, I love the screening from him. It's really good. This was a great stat from the Hornets broadcast. He's had 18 straight games with at least 3 offensive rebounds, which is not common. I mean, a lot of guys struggle to ever find 3 offensive rebounds in a game. We told you about Donte DiVincenzo. Isaiah Hartenstein, he's been good. Just needs to hold on to the ball and finish when he gets offensive rebounds. And the dude is just so foul prone around the basket. Like every single game you think it's dicey calls, but it happens over and over and over again. So he just needs to clean that up a little bit. One sick move from Deuce McBride against the Hornets, like little step back midi. That's a carryover from what we saw in the preseason. Evan Fournier shot the ball terribly. Not a lot to note there. Nice to see him out on the floor though. Kind of. RJ Barrett making his return against the Hornets. It's clear that he is still out of rhythm, but that's okay. That'll come with time. And again, him being a proactive cutter, finding open space, leveraging that into passing is all super, super encouraging. And I think the way the Knicks are humming right now, the way he was humming, it's going to be a balancing act to work him back into the offense. But the Knicks are really well positioned to do it. And I think with how smart RJ is playing, it'll be so much more seamless. Where in the past, I would be coming on here and having, I think, legitimate concerns about him disrupting that rhythm, disrupting that flow, and kind of ruining what the Knicks had, and would probably be talking about him coming off the bench. The way he's been playing this year, no such concerns. I think he is going to fit in just fine, and I think he's going to have a really nice game tonight against Minnesota. Josh Hart has not gotten it going from a shooting and scoring perspective this year, and yeah, that's slightly concerning. But he is doing other things really well. He had 3 steals against the Hornets down the stretch against the Wizards. He had a couple of great help blocks, and in a lineup where everyone's just shooting the skin off the basketball, like he doesn't have to do that much, and he just fits in and fills in perfectly. And I think it'll help him going back to the bench, and it'll continue to help the Knicks pace there and the Knicks defense there. The Minnesota game, this is a great measuring stick game for the New York Knicks. You go to the standings right now and you see the Timberwolves are leading the Western Conference 9-3 this year. The Knicks right now have the 5th best scoring margin in all of basketball. They're behind the Celtics, the Sixers, the Thunder, and yes, the Minnesota Timberwolves by just 0.1 points. So in terms of how real what the Knicks are doing is, particularly how real their offense is, as Minnesota's been, I think right now they're top 3, but at points, they've been the best defense in all of basketball this year. I think as of a week ago, they were the best defense in all of basketball this year. So this is a measuring stick game for the Knicks. Yeah, they're currently, sorry, I was just looking up. They're currently the 3rd best defense in basketball. This is absolutely a measuring stick game for the Knicks offense. And sure, like they might just not shoot as well, and it might not look as good, but the Knicks are terrible around the rim this season, like historically poor. And that's part of my confidence in this offense, that they're 10th in the NBA despite that. And you would expect on what they did at the rim last year and with the floor opening up, that will only continue to get better over the course of the season. Minnesota is just about the best rim protecting team in the league. Rudy Gobert is playing like his 3 deep boy years. Anthony Edwards is a menace on the perimeter, and Jalen Brunson going to be a really fun matchup for him against his Team USA running mate, a guy who he developed a really nice relationship with over the summer. Hopefully, future New York Knick, Anthony Edwards. We should all pray to that. Burn some Knicks sage. I don't even know what that would look like. Maybe you get a piece of a Patrick Ewing jersey in there. I'm not sure. James Dolan should start putting that out. That would be a good way to recoup some value if the sphere continues to tank. But that's off topic. Point is, the Knicks are going to have to be better at the rim in this game than they have been at points. I think Julius Randle, being terrible at the start of the year now, very clearly, like especially that Hornets game, showing off really nice touch around the rim, showing off great patience around the rim. He's going to be a key to that, having RJ Barrett back. And if he's not finishing, at least creating easy putbacks for Mitchell Robinson. He's going to be key to that. And Emmanuel quickly getting more aggressive attack in the basket. He will be a key to that. And then defensively, I don't think this is a great offensive team, but you see Karl-Anthony Towns getting in rhythm. So big game for Julius Randle one-on-one. If he can disrupt him at all, or if Mitchell Robinson gets that matchup and Randle's on Gobert, it'll be big for Mitchell Robinson to try to handle that, though. I think they'll keep Robinson on Gobert just to keep him close to the basket. But bunch of interesting stuff to watch in this one. And you'll come out of it, I think, knowing more about the Knicks. But, and this is something we'll discuss more and more throughout the week, this Knicks team is clearly better than they were last year. The offense, I think, is clearly better than it was last year. The defense, I think, could be better than it was last year. And as they get healthier, as everyone gets in rhythm, as they all get in sync, I think we're going to see that more and more. But that's it for this edition of the Locked On Knicks podcast. Until tonight, where we recap Knicks Timberwolves, I'm Gavin Schall. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.